Let's talk about health care. You promised to repeal Obamacare for 7 years. Your bill didn't survive 3 weeks. What happened?
Well, it hasn't survived yet. What happened is we are going through what I would call a very painful growing pain. I'd like to see the growth at the end of that pain, which is we've been an opposition party for 10 years. And I've been long saying, if we're going to be successful, deliver for the American people, improve people's lives, we've got to become a proposition governing party. About 90% of our members are for this bill. We're not going to give up after 7 years of dealing with this, after running on a plan all of last year, translating that plan into legislation, which is what this is.
Okay, so what's the plan B?
Well, plan B is we keep talking to each other and figure out how we get to yes and how we get this bill passed.
So you're not changing the policy, you're just putting more pressure.
No, we're listening to people, and if we can make improvements to this bill, all the better. So if improvements can be made to this legislation that get people to yes, that's great.
The president said that maybe he wishes he didn't do health care first now. Do you regret that too, that you did health care?
Not at all, because we could not have done tax reform first for a whole host of reasons. Whether tax reform gets $1 trillion easier if we do health care first. If you want me to explain.
No, I understand it.
Okay,
yeah.
and then, but the other problem is we literally didn't have the time to write a tax bill yet. The House is the only one with a plan right now. The White House is still working on a plan. The Senate doesn't have a plan. So it is inconceivable that we would have been able to write a tax reform bill and into law before summer.
Do you think it would have helped if the president were more involved in the policy itself?
Oh, he was deeply involved. That's the thing that I was so pleased and impressed with. He really rolled up his sleeves. So actually, he's up to speed on the issue. He knows the circumstances. What I worry about, Nora, is that if we don't do this, then he'll just go work with Democrats to try and change Obamacare. And that's that's hardly a conservative thing. This is a can-do president who's a business guy who wants to get things done. And I know that he wants to get things done with the Republican Congress. But if this Republican Congress allows the perfect to be the enemy of the good, I worry we'll push the president into working with Democrats. He's been suggesting that as much.
I mean, have you reached out to the Democrats yet to work on this bill, Pelosi?
No, I'm trying to get this bill passed. Nancy and I see things very, very differently. I don't want
then
government
you guys
running
are not
healthcare.
on the same page. The President of the United States saying he's going to work with Democrats on this.
Yeah, I know he's been saying that. And I don't want that to happen. You know why? Because I want a patient-centered system. I don't want government running healthcare. The government shouldn't tell you what you must do with your life, with your healthcare. We should give people choices.
Down on April 29th unless you pass a funding bill. Will it defund Planned Parenthood?
Well, that's in our Obamacare legislation. So we think the smart way to go is through reconciliation, because that only requires 50 votes. It takes 60 votes to defund Planned Parenthood in the Senate. If you go through appropriations, I don't think there are 60 votes.
So you don't want the defunding of Planned Parenthood?
And we want that to be in our reconciliation.
Not in the funding bill.
It's reconciliation is where we have the best chance of getting it done. Let me just say this.
We're talking about shutting down the government.
No.
And you hear people in the Freedom Caucus, and they're saying, we want the defunding of Planned Parenthood in this funding bill. We'll shut down the government.
It's in our Obamacare replacement bill, and that bill can't be filibustered. That's the smart place to put it, and that's where we have a chance of doing it. Let me just say this, Nora. We're not going to have a government shutdown. The president doesn't want to have a government shutdown. It's funding the government from April 28th to September 30th.
So that funding bill doesn't need to include new money for the wall, the border wall?
Well, of course, the DHS needs money for border security.
So that will be in there?
There's always money for border security.
Well, I know, and what I meant was additional money for the wall.
The big chunk of money for the wall really is next fiscal year's appropriations, because they literally can't start construction even this quickly.
Who's driving the agenda on tax reform? Is it the White House or Republicans?
Well, I think it's a collaborative effort. It's the House Ways and Means Committee, it's the Senate Finance Committee, which are the primary drivers in Congress, and the White House.
The president's spokesperson just said it's the White House that's driving it.
Well, that's fine with me. I don't really care who's driving it, as fine as we get to an agreement and get it done.
But the
so it's really a three-way conversation.
But the Trump tax plan and the Ryan tax plan is different.
Well, it's not a Ryan tax plan. It's the House blueprint that every House Republican ran on. But we always knew.
You're an architect.
I helped Kevin Brady, really, our chairman of the Ways and Means, but I worked on this when I was chair. We always knew this was the beginning of the process. You never go into the legislative process and says, here's my plan, take it or leave it.
How's your relationship with President Trump?
Very good. We talk frequently, actually. We didn't know each other very well, or if at all, before the election, but we've established a very good relationship.
Every day?
Yeah, just about.
How long do you
talk? Talked to him about a half hour ago.
And what do you talk about?
Just the policies of the day. We're talking about healthcare these days, talk about tax reform, a lot of things.
Did you guys talk at all about that tweet he sent out to watch a show on Fox where the anchors
Yeah,
called
he
for
did.
you?
He called me and he said, look, he actually was very apologetic about it in that he said, I had no idea that that's what she was going to talk about. I thought she was going to talk about something else. So really, that was completely coincidental. And I know, and I believe he was right when he says that. He thought she was going to talk about something with respect to Russia that he thought was interesting and favorable. He had no idea she was going to do that. But hey, this job, you take a lot of, you take a lot. I knew this was going to be the last job I took in politics because, and I'm happy with it. I'm totally comfortable with that because it's an opportunity to make a big difference, get things done. And this is one of those jobs where you take a bunch of slings and arrows and you just know that when you take this job, you take it with a grain of salt. It really doesn't get to me anymore.
I thought about you last week, and I thought how you might have ended the week when you went home to Wisconsin.
You know what happened? I ended the week. My wife texted me as I was going to flying home to O'Hare. I go to O'Hare and then drive to Wisconsin from there. She said, you picked the wrong Lent to give up drinking beer. You need a beer.
See, that's what I thought about you. I've known you long enough that I thought he's having an extra beer tonight.
Yeah, I had none because I gave it up for Lent. And then what do? I get home for halftime of the Badger game, and we lose to Florida in overtime with a last-second three-point shot. It was, that was a tough day. That was a really tough day.
You're the Speaker of the House. You're the expert on this, no doubt. And you have been on House Ways and Means, so you know tax policy. But I'm looking at this. You've promised to make tax reform revenue neutral, and you've promised to make it permanent.
Yes.
And you don't have now the $1 trillion in taxes from the Obamacare repeal.
Right.
And the border adjustment tax, which also would get you about $1 trillion in revenue.
Right. Hey, you've done your homework on this.
But it's not clear you're going to get that either.
Yeah. Let me go back. That means we'll have to keep those Obamacare taxes on the book. So that $1 trillion will stay a $1 trillion tax increase on the American economy through Obamacare. We'll have to leave that there, and then we're back to exactly what we were doing. That's bad for the economy. That's a drag on the economy. All those Obamacare taxes hurt the economy, make health insurance more expensive, hurt things like our medical devices that we use to keep our lives healthier and longer. Those taxes will have to remain, and then we'll do what we were always planning on doing, is reform the tax code, the rest of the tax code. We're going to have lots of negotiations all year long on how to get to tax reform. But it is crystal clear to any economic observer who watches this, the American tax system is the most uncompetitive one in the industrialized world, and this is critical for economic growth and job creation. That's why I'm still confident we're going to get tax reform, because we, Republicans, this is in our DNA. Cleaning up the IRS, cleaning up the tax code, making America more competitive, getting jobs and manufacturing restored to America, lowering our tax rates to make us more competitive. That's something we all agree on. We don't have a schism whatsoever in our party on that. And that's why I'm confident we'll still get tax reform. But we'll still have this sore thumb sticking out on the tax code, which is $1 trillion of Obamacare taxes won't have been repealed. They'll still stay there in place.
Do you have assurances that President Trump will back the border adjustment tax?
We're always talking about that. So all of the features of the tax code, nothing is final until it's all agreed to at the end of the day. We're having constant conversations with the administration on these things. So we think it's what 160 other countries do. We're penalizing American-made products. So we basically have tax laws that penalize making things in America and reward outsourcing manufacturing. We think that's really stupid, and we shouldn't be doing that, and that's why we had this border